Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a traditional Wednesday walkabout. I don't think we've done one of these for a while. It is cool, it is rainy. I am starting to see some activity pre-spring going on in the garden. Let's walk around and take a look. What do you say, Stuart?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And before we get started, just a reminder to tune in on Sunday for a Linda Vater Live at 1:30 if you're a member, at 2 if you are not, and we'll try to put a little video or a little helpful tool so you can figure out how to become a member if you so choose. So let's take a break right here, and then let's see what I've got on my list to do pre-spring. Well, if you're like me, you are so itchy to get out in the garden, especially on days that have been, just uncharacteristically warm for January. Today, it is very chilly and it is also very drizzly. And because of that, this is the kind of weather that puts me in the mood to really get out and start gardening, because I see its effects. I see all sorts of things starting to germinate and even budding out a little bit, even though it's really been pretty cold. So case in point, let's show everyone, Stuart, this magnolia, one of the sister magnolias. And it is already starting to put out buds. Look there. Now that doesn't concern me too much, because unless it gets very brutally cold, these will be fine. But you can see they are already getting thick and getting succulent. And before too long, if I wanted to, I could bring these branches in. I could cut some of them and bring them into force. The warm inside temperatures would immediately force them to open in leaf, if not in flower bloom. But they aren't quite there yet, but before too long, I anticipate they will be. And I did some very delicate conservative pruning on it in the fall and in late summer, and you can see how I'm starting to get benefit from that. You can see the little buds that are starting to come out. The other thing that I did was I pruned it up from the base. This is something that you might want to check with your extension center. Put it in a search engine or something to see if it's okay in your zone to do it now. But this is one of those kinds of things that on a warm day you could come out here and you could do the same. You could limb up some kind of large shrub that you want to turn into a small tree. So obviously I have kind of done it on this magnolia. I feel kind of like a private eye in my new trench coat, Stuart.
The sleuth song.
Yeah, it's just the right degree of weight. I got this on a thrifting adventure.
Oh, many of them know.
Okay. And I also did it on this viburnum, and you can see that I pruned it up. It's going to start putting out all sorts of new leafy growth and new growth that will extend the branches, and before too long, like my viburnum at the other house, this is just a standard Chinese snowball viburnum, it will turn into a small tree that will bloom white this spring, and I cannot wait. Now, it's not in bud yet. I don't see any sign of any blooms, but this year I probably will try forcing a couple of these branches to see if I could get some early blossoms, early spring blossoms indoors, if not out. Now remember, in the not too distant future, this is all going to be blooming in pink and white in the foreground of these beautiful arborvitaes. Now I want to show you something that I've been looking out for. So if you have encore azaleas and they're not blooming, it may be because they're just not quite mature enough to bloom as profusely as they eventually will. I discovered that to be the case with mine, and interestingly, mine bloomed more heavily in late summer and in early fall, and really even late fall, than they did in the spring. So one thing I'm starting to check for now that they're a little bit more mature is, am I getting buds on them for spring bloom? And I can see that indeed I am starting to get some nascent little buds right in there. You can see some. I also checked out The azaleas on the other side, those have buds on them too. Depending on the exposure of the plant and where it is in reference to the amount of sun and moisture it gets, some will probably have more buds than the others. But just to make myself feel less scared, less anxious, and more secure about what's going to happen this spring, I can come out here and I can check my Encore azaleas. And look at how much they have grown. Look at how tall this one is already. And I might find that ultimately these are a little bit taller than I want them to be in reference to the Moondance hydrangeas that I've got behind them. I kept these flowers on for just kind of winter interest, but also because I think it will help protect and insulate the stems against any really, really late hard frosts. Now these bloom on new wood, so they will bloom regardless, but it might affect the timing of the bloom. But I digress. If these get a little bit taller than I want in front of the Moondance hydrangeas, which were spectacular last year, Stuart, let's maybe, if we can, put up a still here of them. Then after these bloom, not before, because I will be pruning off any potential flowers, but after they have bloomed, if I want to reduce the size, the height, and the scale of these, that's when I will prune them, after they bloom. And then they can continue to put on new growth and hopefully some new buds for the fall. Because what? They rebloom in the fall and in late summer. After blooming in the spring, it's a twofer. Well, one happy side effect of having a wood-burning fireplace is afterwards I have lots of wood ashes. And I always take some of those ashes and I sprinkle them and work them into the soil around the base of any clematis that I have. This is a taiga clematis from Southern Living Plants. I've got it here. It's really doing extremely well. You can see how it's growing up and through this arbor vitae. But I'm going to give it just a little dose because these like alkaline conditions, not acidic. So I'm going to be giving them a little dose of alkalinity so that they will bloom hopefully pretty heavily this year. Well, if you've got itchy fingers and you just have to get out in the garden and do something, here's one thing you can do, but you're going to do it with a certain technique. So I've got all these apple blossom roses that are going to bloom along autumn's edge. I also have some different shrub roses that are blooming in other parts of the garden. And one thing I could do now is I could come in here and I could clean up all of the leafy debris underneath the canopy. I should have gloves on to do this because these are prickly, but underneath the canopy of the roses. Why? Because I want to remove any diseased foliage that might have dropped off of the plant and is now hiding underneath the long canes and the branches of the plant itself. So you can remove all of that. If you fear then that they're going to be cold once you have removed their blanket of leaves, then just get some more oak leaves or some kind of just tree leaves or something of that nature. You can even get compost and just sprinkle it around the base of the rose itself. But this way you won't have all of those black spot leaves or any kind of, if there's spider mite, anything like that. You're going to remove all of that so you'll have a clean slate and you won't have anything that is then kind of a vector to create disease and pest problems moving up the canes. Well, one thing I've been getting lots of questions about, and that is boxwood bronzing. And I have quite a bit of it on lots of my boxwood. It doesn't distress me as it distresses some people because I know it will eventually green back up in the spring, and I can do things to encourage that green up. So I will give them a good feed in probably late winter, early spring, before I don't want to feed them prematurely because I don't want to force any new growth out, which will then get zapped by cold weather. But late winter, early spring, I'm going to give them a feed. And what am I going to use? I'm going to use that top buxus that I talk about. Stuart, let's provide a link and even a picture right here of top buxus and what it looks like. It comes in these little pellets that then you put into some kind of sprayer. It dissolves, and then you just spray your boxwood. And I have found it works really, really well, and it will speed up greening any of your boxwood that bronze. Now, different varieties of boxwood tend to bronze more than other varieties, and I have found Green Mountain has a bronzing tendency. Green Velvet sometimes does. It really just depends not only on what variety, but what kind of exposure it gets. And I've been really pleased at how browning resistant or bronzing resistant these better boxwood are. You can see that they are still pretty green with little bronzing. Also, some of these up here, which are winter gem and some winter green, these have been pretty good about kind of keeping that bronzing at bay. And yeah, these are older plants, and they look pretty good. Yeah, but again, a lot of it just depends on Mother Nature. You can do what you try to do to prevent that kind of bronzing. For example, this one over here is really old and it's really mature. This is just a common wintergreen, and it has really bronzed. But again, I will just give it a good feed, and I think it will recover nicely and be a beautiful, beautiful green when all of my tulips and my other spring lovelies are in bloom.
It blends with the brick now.
It blends with the brick. Okay, something else to look for in your landscape, and look forward to any kind of candidates you have that might make good topiary. And obviously this is a skylight, better boxwood. It will make good topiary with a little bit of strangulation and a little bit of torture to get it to stand up and do what I want it to do. But I am not going to let this plant boss me. If I want it to be a topiary, I will try to encourage it in that direction. So let's take a break here, and we'll go to the back, and I'm going to show you something I'm really excited about. The other thing that I'm having done, definitely not doing it myself, but I try to get all of my unfun things done to the house and to the garden in these unfun months, because when it turns springy, I want to be outside in the garden, planting, enjoying the blooms, doing all of that kind of entertaining stuff, not the humdrum stuff of home maintenance. So this week I've had somebody come out. They've been fixing some cracks in the windows, there's been some separation between the window frame and the brick. Compliments of an earthquake we had last year. Do you remember that big earthquake we had? Yeah. And so now I'm starting to make some repairs on that. I'm doing it now versus later, partly because I don't want to even have those guys around when the weather is really nice and I want to kind of enjoy my garden in some semblance of privacy. So here's a couple of things that I'm having done this week. Let me walk around this way. And let me show you one thing. So a lot of, and I am happy about this, a lot of my ajuga, which did so well back here in most respects, is kind of just turning to winter mush. And you know what? That is just fine with me. I want it to turn into winter mush. Why? Because I'm going to come in and I'm going to scrape off all of the mushy foliage that last year got a terrible, terrible case of powdery mildew. Do you remember that?
Oh, I definitely remember that.
Yeah, and so I really want all of that old diseased foliage to slough off. I will remove any mulch that's around it, put down new mulch, and hopefully I will be able to keep some of that powdery mildew at bay. Part of the problem is just the amount of air circulation and such that it gets back here, and maybe the quality of the drainage in the soil, but I'll do what I can to mitigate that problem. Another thing that I did that worked brilliantly. Okay, this falls into the category of use what you have. So I've got this fabulous stand of Chef's Choice rosemary. And look at how beautiful.
As soon as you touch it, it smells
Yeah, oh
really good,
gosh.
yeah.
And it still looks incredible because I have protected it from our severe cold. And here's how I did it. I went down into the basement and we had some old insulated sleeping bags that were down in there. And I have used those kind of tarps, those tarps that you buy, the freeze cloth and things, and I've used them. But I have found that they tend to be lightweight. They kind of blow off and they just aren't as effective for me.
I get why
But
this wouldn't do that, yeah.
this worked brilliantly. So you might even at a thrift store look for some of these. Doesn't matter if it's ripped or stained. And then I just had this covered up
Let's see if I can get the
during the
shot.
cold weather. And it's heavy enough that it's not going to blow off. So this worked brilliantly. So there's a really good tip. We need to put a little light bulb there, Stuart.
Take care of your
Yeah,
kids.
this worked. Yeah, this worked great. So now I've got to dry it out while it's going to be above freezing and it's going to be warm for a while longer. I might be tempted to go ahead and cut back things like my Artemisias. If you've got any Russian sage or Perovskia, you don't want to go ahead and cut that back. You want to leave that foliage in place, again, because it will kind of protect that root ball and protect it from freeze. So now, and you can see here where earlier in the year, when we prune some of our boxwood and things, we put it on our plants to kind of insulate them a little bit. Tragedy here, Stuart, tragedy. This looked so natural and happy in place that I completely forgot that it was a Eugenia topiary.
Oh, no.
And I killed it. This was, I don't know how many years old, but
Oh, no.
fortunately they're fairly inexpensive when you buy them and they grow pretty quickly. So I'll have to get something to replace that here. Same thing over here. All of this ajuga is looking mushy and needs to be sloughed off.
I gotta
and
say, the green everywhere mixed in with the gold from the plant, it just looks really, really pretty over
yeah,
here.
it does look
Color-wise.
pretty. It does look pretty. So what I'm excited about, Stuart, is right here. Let's put up a picture of the piece of lattice that I am going to install right here. I believe I talked about that last year. It is going to be identical to the lattice that is at the top of the fence and in the air conditioning surround. And I think it will look great here. It's capped off and it will just give a little bit of visual interest to a space that looks kind of blank and it looks unfinished to me. So this was a pretty easy remedy. I may or may not grow anything on it and it will look good whether it's bare of foliage or if something is really weaving through all of the lattice trellising. But I am happy to get that, and Kayla has it ready, and as soon as it gets a little drier and maybe a little warmer, we'll go ahead and install that. So we're doing a few things like that here in the backyard. You guys will notice that all of the boxwood globes that marched up and down, these steps, they are no longer here. I went ahead and planted them here in the back because I wanted more globes. And I think if I replace them at all, what I will replace them with is some kind of, do you remember those buckets we did, Stuart, for a photo shoot?
Yeah.
There were 3 buckets.
At the fairy tale house?
Yes, at
Oh,
Fairy
yeah.
Tales. They were beautiful. If we can find that
Oh, I
image,
know. Those are some of my favorite pictures we've ever
yeah,
taken.
let's put that up because I might just have seasonal blooms marching up and down here for the spring. I think it will be very, very pretty. And then you can see another my bad of plants that I've killed.
Oh, no.
All of these succulents that I had in these small plants, I had them, when we took all of the rest of the plants to the greenhouse, I was so concentrating on the large plants that I completely forgot about these little babies, and they have succumbed to the freeze. So I have to empty these pots out and clean this area up. And right here, Stuart, you can see how much wood we have been burning this winter, and have we enjoyed that outdoor fireplace. Now we are just ready for it to be warm enough to enjoy the fire pit. But it's already the end of January. Here's my question of the day. Can you guys believe January has gone by so fast? I can't, I'm just overwhelmed with how time is marching by so much more quickly now that I'm older. So there you go. There's just a little walkabout on a damp day. It's starting to drizzle again, Stuart. The drizzle is turning into rain, so I think I'll go in. But there is hope. Spring is going to arrive. I can feel the rumbling underneath my feet of all of the root activity and everything that's going on underneath the soil.
You're a sleuth. You should be able to figure it out.
I'm a sleuth. You're right. I should be able to figure it out. Thanks for hanging with me on this kind of, well, it's kind of a grisly day, but something to look forward to. I'm going to visit my kids in Denver this weekend. That's going to be a lot of fun, and we might be doing a little thrifting, so you guys are going to want to make sure that you tune in. Don't forget the Linda Vater Live on Sunday, and also don't forget to subscribe, to hit that follow button, thumbs up if you like this kind of content, and make sure to share with others. Thank you, guys.
Where in the world is Linda Vater?